What's up, guys? It is episode 15 of Bleav in Queens. I'm back, baby. Joey C back in the building for this episode with my man Tyler Ward. He has the perfect attendance record through 15 episodes of Bleav in Queens. Tyler, we're missing someone tonight, aren't we?
We are missing someone, and we ragged you last episode because
Oh,
Rec
I
was
heard.
here. Rec went out of his way to record with me in like a side room while he was in Cali, and this schmuck, being you, is out here just doing a little family reunion in NY, thinking you can prioritize that over our Bleav in Queens. Whatever. Rec, his excuse is, oh, I'm on a flight back home from Cali. Yeah. Whoop-de effing do. All right, Rec? I
Yeah,
want you
right. Come
recording.
on.
You have the money. Buy the Wi-Fi. Make sure it's connected. Let's record while you're on the flight. Who says no?
What is he on fucking Spirit Airlines right now? He can't do the show? I mean, come on, Rec. Look. I don't care if you were making the veteran minimum. I don't care if you were making $500,000 a year when you were with the Mets, man. Get the Wi-Fi, fly first class, do the damn show. If you're on JetBlue, if you're on Delta, even American Airlines, right? Like, we don't discriminate. As long as you're not being a cheap ass on Spirit right now, you can join us. So there's no excuses. He could have had a cameo from his wife, Kelly, could have had any of his kids on the show. And instead, he's probably sipping on a cocktail right now, just enjoying life. And we're out here in the nitty gritty of things at 1 a.m, putting in the hard work. It's just it's inexcusable if you ask me.
It is inexcusable, and so was the Mets this past series, Joe. So take it away. What are we talking about today?
Yeah, we've got a lot to get to. Look, this was the worst Mets series of the year. I haven't felt this bad after a series since probably when they split a 4-game set with the Marlins a few weeks back. I'm just, a lot of things went wrong in this series between injuries, between, just bad plays. We're going to get into all of that. We've got some bright spots, though. Brett Baty is officially a New York Met. I can't wait to get into that. We might have our third baseman of the next decade and a half. But first, Tyler, I think it's very important that we remind the people who this show is brought to you by, and that's BetOnline. BetOnline, it's the spot to go for your lines, your odds, your latest news and developments in the world of sports. Guys, get those bets in on BetOnline, whether you want to bet MLB games daily, MLB futures. Look, hey, the one bright side to the Mets losing 3 out of 4, you'll get better odds on the Mets to win the World Series this year. So go do that at BetOnline. Go get those NFL futures in weeks 1, weeks 2, and of course, division conference champs. Those are all available on BetOnline. So head on over there and use that code Bleav50. That's BLEAV50 for your first time 50% welcome bonus. Guys, BetOnline, it's where the game begins. Tyler, take it away. We've got some big news. Obviously, we've got to recap the series. We've got yet another divisional rival we're playing this weekend, the Phillies. We're going to get to all of that, everything I discussed, Brett Baty and whatnot. But Bleav in Queens has some monumental, groundbreaking, one might say, Tyler, earth-shattering news. And I'll let you take it away from here.
Alrighty, folks, taking a step away from episode 15 of Bleav in Queens to let you all know that, yes, we have merchandise now to represent the podcast. I've been asked all the time from viewers on YouTube and overall on social media, when is merch going to come out? Well, it has officially begun. So if you're watching here on YouTube, you guys see it. We have 7 different awesome t-shirt options, but also if you're listening wherever you get your audio podcast, don't worry, in case you guys don't want to type in the website, we will have the link for you guys down in the description. Wherever you get your podcast, same thing here on YouTube for this latest episode. But guys, look at these designs. They are so fantastic. We got Bleav in Queens and a nice Mets-esque cursive font. Shout out to our great team at the Bleav Network for coming up with these designs for us. We have them in every single color from black to white to orange and blue, all Mets-centric, of course. We have Brittany Vogelback, one of my favorite t-shirts we have here in all these same colors as well. That one looks fantastic. Then down forward, outside of the Bleav in Queens tank tops and normal t-shirts, we have Get Wrecked for Anthony Recker. Beautiful design here in orange, blue, black, and white. Love these designs so much. They came out so clean. Again, so proud of what the Bleav team was able to do here. For Joe Serralo, who's known for saying prospects are cool, parades are cooler. If you guys are in favor of trading prospects when the timing is right to help a team, of course, win a championship, then this is the shirt for you. We have it in just blue and orange for this one. Then we have Trumpet, which is, of course, for Edwin Diaz. Cue those trumpets, baby. Cue Narco by Blaster Jacks. We have that in every colorway for you guys. The black one always looks so sick. I mean, everything black looks awesome for me, Wardy. That's always what I wear on YouTube as is. And then my personal favorite, biasly, is I always say the word schmuck either on the podcast or for my normal content on WardyNYM on YouTube. We have it in black, white, orange, and blue. You guys can get it. So if you guys want to be a schmuck like me or call other people schmucks, however you want to go about it, make sure to get the schmuck t-shirt. And the prices are great, ranging from $25 to $27 or $20 to $22 if you guys get the tank top. So all you got to do is go to shop.bleav.com. Again, that is shop.bleav.com. And then once you go down to the left on the website, it'll ask you for shows, and those are your options for the Bleav shows. Click on Bleav in Queens, and you'll get your 7 different t-shirt options. More t-shirts will surely be rolling out, but until then, these are the designs we're working with. So make sure to tag us on social media or let us know in the comments on YouTube if you guys purchase. We can't wait to see you guys repping them at Mets games or wherever you're going to be repping them. Thank you guys all so much in advance. Again, just the beginning here on Bleav in Queens. Make sure to check it all out. Links in the description as always on YouTube and wherever you get your audio podcasts. Again, one more time for the people in the back, shop.bleav for Bleav.com. Get your Bleav in Queens merchandise today. And now let's hop right back into this episode. What a groundbreaking announcement. Seriously, beautifully done by me, I will biasly say. But again, guys, make sure to check it out. Links down below. Joe, any final remarks on the merchandise before we deep dive the show?
I mean, Tyler, it's fucking incredible stuff. It is great
Thank
stuff. I will say, you schmuck, you got one thing wrong. The prospects are cool, parades are cooler. I'd love to take credit for that. That's not my catchphrase. That is Casey Stern, of course, MLB insider.
You've also said it before.
I've said it, and I've always credited Casey.
Okay, fair.
That was actually a mishap on the back end with Bleav, because that's Casey's show, Unfiltered with Casey Stern, also on our network. Casey is a diehard Mets fan, just like we are, Tyler. We will have him on the show very soon. He's a great guy. But I do want to make it clear that catchphrase is Casey's. I believe he might have trademarked it. But he is another host in the Bleav family, Unfiltered with Casey Stern. And I agree. Prospects are cool. Parades are a whole fucking lot cooler. And last point I want to make when it comes to the merch, that trumpet shirt, Tyler, I don't know if you saw my tweet. You know, I mentioned it's about 1 a.m. right now. I was out tonight, had a little date action. After dinner, we went to the bar, and Narco came on at the bar. At the bar. Tyler, when I say it was fucking electric, dude. I mean, I heard that, and I was like, I'm talking to the girl. We met up with her friends, and I'm like, she's talking to me, and I'm like listening. I'm like, oh, yeah. And in the back, I'm like, is that what I think it is? Did I just hear? Did I just hear what I think I just heard? Dude, trumpets is being played at bars now. Like, New York City bars. You can't make it up. It's unreal.
And the funny thing is that the Braves think they have something, but William Contreras walking up to it and blasting it there in Truist every game, as if anyone thinks that song is backed with William. No. If you know Narco by Blaster Jacks, you know that is Edwin Diaz's music to come in the ninth or whenever he's coming in. But that's besides the point. Let's talk about some more frustrating things before we get to some positives, which was this Braves series losing 3 of 4. I deep dived it as well. My channel went over to post games for every single game. 3 of those post games were losses, and they were brutal. So my initial question to you, Joe, is before we go in the nitty and gritty about these each 4 games and then get into the Phillies series, and before that, Brett Baty and how great he looked so far in his debut, what he can mean for the Mets on the hot quarter down the stretch and in the future, what is your initial raw takeaway from losing 3 of 4 here to the Atlanta Braves?
It's tough. I'm kind of torn, to be honest, because it sucks, right? My initial raw gut reaction is that this sucks. You just beat them 4 out of 5, just beat the Phils 2 out of 3, right? We're cocky, we're bragging, we're kings of the fucking world. And then you drop 3 out of 4, and it's like, worst case, we were hoping for a split here. Worst case, split this, go 6-3 in a 9-game stretch. So it's a bit of a reality check, if you will. I was going to say gut punch, but I don't think it's that severe. It's definitely a reality check. At the same time, I was just asking for 5 out of 9 going into this Brave stretch, right? Now, once we took the first 4 out of 5, I don't think it was a stretch to want 6. I don't think it was greedy to want to win 6 out of 9. But going into it, I was like, hey, go 5-4. And, just if you have a winning record against the Braves, you're probably going to win the division. So that's what we did. And trying to look at this, in the macro, trying to look at this, taking emotion out of it, removing that element, I'm happy, right? We got 5 out of 4, but it definitely stinks, especially just the way it all happened, right? Games 1 and 2, Cookie and Ty get hurt in the first 2 innings. I mean, that's such a gut punch. Cookie was our leader in wins. Go figure, on a team with Scherzer and DeGrom and Bassett, who was an all-star last year. Ty, who was an all-star last year. Go figure, Cookie is our wins leader. He goes down. He's going to be out like a month. You get Ty, maybe encouraging signs there. He may be ready to make his next start. I don't see him missing more than 10 days, but still, it's like, it's a gut punch to have him, he was pitching pretty well. It was only 2 innings, but he was doing well. And to have him leave injured, it sucks. Scherzer, I thought he pitched great. I actually don't know if I fully agree with Buck pulling him when he did, because even though Scherzer gave up those 4 earned runs, Ottavino allowed, 3 of them to cross the plate? If not, was it all 4? No, Ottavino allowed 3.
It was 4 in total. 3 got charged. Pardon me. Maybe it was 3. You might be right.
No, you're right. You're right. Ottavino allowed 4 runs to cross home. 1 was charged to him. That was the actual home run. 3 were charged to Scherzer. And so it's like, it all comes back to the bullpen. I would say my biggest takeaway from this series is I was wrong about the bats we acquired. They look great. Vogie, Ruff, who just missed a home run by this much, Naquin, the platoon thing, it's working, right? We didn't do enough to that bullpen. And when Cookie and Ty go down, we got freaking RJ Alvarez pitching in a big league game. He belongs nowhere near the big leagues, right?
And he's since been DFA'd.
Yeah, let's be honest. He belongs nowhere near a big league roster. So there's question marks. There's concerns. If shit hits the fan, who's the next man up in the bullpen outside of Diaz? I don't know. That's what I walk away from this series feeling most concerned about. It's like, we've got Scherzer, we've got Jake, we've got Diaz. After that, some banged up starters and a lot of question marks in the bullpen. All of a sudden, we had too much pitching, and now I'm genuinely worried if we have enough.
See, it's funny because don't get me wrong, the bullpen really labored in this one. And when you look at the guys that labored most, for the most part, not all of them, but especially in games 1 and 2, were guys that are not expected to be in the bullpen down the stretch come playoff time. Especially when you look at the RJ Alvarez's, the Steven Negosics, among others. These are guys that were strictly eating innings because the Mets had no other options. And the question that lies for all us Mets fans is, why didn't we have more options, right? Well, you look at the injuries to Drew Smith right now still. Tyler McGill, Cookie Carrasco being on the shelf really hurts right now, obviously, and Ty having a short start. But those are guys that at this juncture in the season should not even be an idea to be in this bullpen for the Mets. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. The bullpen is a question mark for this team, and I have a great feeling that that'll probably make or break how deep this team goes down the stretch here in the playoffs. However, I'm not just looking at the bullpen because you get blown out 15-1 in game 1. Cookie, of course, is out for over a month now with an oblique injury. Thankfully, it's not as severe as what was Max Scherzer's, but he's still going to need ramp-up time for a guy around 35 years of age. They're not going to rush it with someone like him. So the Mets will be lucky if they have him, of course, by the end of the season as they eventually head into playoffs here. But after that, the Mets made zero valiant effort offensively. Now, this was a game where how did Cookie get hurt? There was a 1-hour rain delay that we saw in this matchup, and Cookie came out to pitch, which was a little questionable to a lot of fans, including myself. And what happens? Cookie comes out after an hour rain delay. For someone of his age, didn't love that idea. I understand you need to eat innings, but this guy throws a pitch, and then he's out for over a month. I mean, would that have still happened potentially if he did not pitch post-rain delay? We'll never know, but it is definitely something to keep in mind and think about Buck Showalter's decision-making. I know his hands were tied there. Again, I'm fully aware the Mets didn't have much options, but it still was just not a great look in that point in time. But the Mets didn't show up in games 1 and 2, and for the majority of the series, the offense was lackluster. We saw that in the Phillies series, Joe. They showed up against Zach Wheeler, who they'll be matching up with again in this 4-game set against the Phillies that we'll be getting into later in the show. But they got shut down by Ranger Suarez. I was at that game. That was frustrating. So were you, obviously. They lost in extras. And then they got shut down by Aaron Nola, who they're matching up against tonight at the time you guys probably watching or listening to episode 15 of Bleav in Queens. So you look at the offense. They do absolutely nothing. The bullpen, our guy that we've raved about a lot, Adonis Medina, finally gets the call in a rush situation. He's a guy that's eating left and right for the Mets, and he absolutely did not have it. He gave up 5 earned runs. Michael Givens, who's been so hit or miss, more so miss up until this final game in this series, he gave up a couple. They gave up 9 total runs between the two. So the Mets offense was lackluster. You know you're having a bad game when Darren Ruff comes out and not pitch 1, but 2 innings and is your best pitcher. He now has the Mets record for the first position player to pitch not 1 but 2 scoreless innings on only 14 pitches. He should not have given up 1 hit. I'm still bothered. I'm not going to lie. Robbie Grossman somehow got a hit when it was a clear error there. I mean, that was really annoying in my opinion.
Talk about being economical, though. I mean, 14 pitches in 2 innings. It's the kind of stuff little leaguers on pitch counts dream of.
We should quite literally consider this guy as a bullpen option because he's been the most reliable guy out of the pen from the trade deadline if you're looking at acquisitions. But the Mets just didn't have the offense. And in game 1, you could understand it a little bit. Look, they're coming into Atlanta. There's no off day. There's a rain out. And the Braves were just the better team. They took advantage of subpar pitching, which has been the entire story of the Braves season. They dominate against lesser opponents, lesser pitching. They make sure that they do not miss any and every opportunity they get. But when you don't score more than a run in these first 2 games of both amounts of losses, it's still on the offense, okay? If the Mets at least got some type of thing offensively going the first 2 games, you could say, hey, the Mets, they lost both their starters, but at least they had a valiant effort. At least they made something get close here. No, it was completely lopsided. When you get outscored 19-1 the first 2 games, by God, at that point, all of us Mets fans and their mothers were praying that Max Scherzer will come in, lock it down. Same thing with Jacob deGrom. Both these guys didn't pitch bad whatsoever, but thankfully the Mets got the win in game 3 that we'll get into in a minute. But overall, this was just a very lackluster Mets team in this 4-game matchup. The Braves were the better team, regardless on some bad bounces. I'm not going to sound like a Braves fan after the Mets took 4 or 5, okay? Regardless on what the reasons are, the Mets were not exactly. The Mets were not the better team. As much as there's voodoo magic going on, this devil magic in Atlanta to do anything and everything to make the Mets not have wins. The umpire was, of course, not having a great strike zone in almost every single one of these games. It doesn't denounce the fact that at the end of the day, the Mets were not the better team. And that is, of course, a reality check to us fans and have to give credit where credit's due. The Braves got the job done. Spencer Strider came into game 1. He won 5, only giving up 1 earned run. He was much better. He knew the approach, and he adjusted his game. He said it himself in trying to get these at-bats going. Yes, the Mets got his pitch count up fairly early, but Strider's not a guy that's known to go deep into games to begin with. He started the year as a reliever, so I'm not surprised they won 5. But he got the job done. He got some swing and misses, and he made the Mets look silly, as did the rest of the Braves bullpen. And in game 2, the Mets lose 5-0. Charlie Morton, who Rex said in our last podcast when you famously weren't here, is Morton going to be the guy from previous games against the Mets this year? Mets had a roughly 8-year array on him through a couple starts in 2022. Or is Morton going to have his patent fastball going upwards of 96, 97 and that nasty curveball working? And that's exactly what happened. The Mets did their best Braves impression in game 2. They struck out 12 times and Morton went 6.2 scoreless, and they struck out 14 times as a whole. That was, of course, with Taijuan Walker being hurt, but it doesn't matter that Walker got hurt there with bad back spasms. He said that was actually the worst pain he's ever had. He looks like he's good to go for Sunday. He said himself today at the time of recording this, but that's going to be the Mets' decision, and we'll get into who may pitch on Sunday. Is it going to be him, or is it going to be potentially right-handed pitching prospect that we'll deep dive here shortly? But the Mets just didn't come up. You saw RJ Alvarez, who was DFA'd the following day, Steven Nagosic, they themselves gave up those 5 runs that the Braves scored. Again, Braves just, of course, continuing to dominate against lesser pitching. Mets didn't have the offense. So you can't say, okay, again, it's because of pitching. No, the Mets did not come up to the plate when they needed to. So that's what made game 3 and game 4 so much more pivotal, right, Joe? You get this crazy game 3 matchup. The Mets win 9-7. It was a roller coaster. Max was a stud, but here's where I'm going to have a respectful disagreement with you on, and that was Max being pulled in that game. He ended up, Max, again, strong outing, nothing crazy, but Max, he went 6.1, 4 earned runs, 3 walks, 8 Ks. But if you were watching that 7th inning, Max could not locate the strike zone to save his life. And granted, do I trust Max more than any other reliever in that bullpen? Absolutely, aside from Edwin Diaz. So you can make the argument. But his pitch count was getting up, and he literally had the bases juice right around 2 outs or less then. Adam Ottavino comes in. He has a double play to end the inning. But, of course, Vaughn Grissom, the young stud of a rookie for the Braves, just legs it out. They do a challenge. It's reverse rolls. The inning continues, and Robbie Grossman hits a 3-run bomb out of nowhere on the Mets, and that changed the complete complexion of the game. Mets were only up by a couple runs at that juncture. Thankfully, they would tack on more with a Pete Alonso clutch 2 RBI single there in the 9th. Daniel Vogelbach would come in after Alonso somebody steals second base, and Vogelbach gets in for the 9th run, which would be huge because Trevor May in the bottom of the 9th, He gives up multiple runs, was looking really shaky against these Braves. Thankfully, the Mets legged it out and got the job done after Edwin Diaz had a scoreless eighth, because of course he did. Edwin's been money all year. But outside of Edwin, the bullpen, there's nothing going right now. There's little to no consistency. So, Joe, what's your opinion here, especially Scherzer? Because I can understand the argument both ways, but in my opinion, same thing with Jake to a certain extent. I understood why Buck made that decision. It just sucks how much we do not have the trust in the bullpen. Even Adam Ottavino, talk about bad luck. Should have had that double play. He legs it out by a hair to get there safe, and that changed the complete complexion of that inning. He ends up giving up one earned run, but the other three attacked on Max. It always sucks when Max, again, gives up runs that he maybe could have gone out of. Same thing with Jake that we saw there in tonight's game at the time of recording this. So, yeah, what's your reaction to Scherzer being pulled? Do you still have that same perspective, or do you kind of understand what I'm saying? Because when I say he was not commanding the strike zone, he was all over the place. You could tell that Max was not in a groove there in the seventh inning.
I would rather live and occasionally die by my superstars than turn to question marks like the Mets bullpen is full of. So personally, Tyler, even if Scherzer doesn't have his best stuff, Scherzer on an off night is better than anyone in that bullpen not named Edwin Diaz, like you mentioned. So, also as a pitcher, and I think we've discussed this before. I don't know if Rec was on that episode or if it was even before his time joining the show. There's nothing more frustrating. And it's part of the game. I get it. Sometimes your bullpen bails you out, and it goes both ways. But there are very few things more frustrating than coming out of a game with guys on base and watching those inherited runners score because, a reliever lets him in. A guy with a fresh arm just out of the pen. And, you're sitting there and you're like, God darn it. Like, I could have gotten those guys out. Or I'd rather at least have it in my hands, right? Like, the old adage, if you want something done right, do it yourself. I'd rather have Scherzer out there. And we saw it 2 nights in a row with inherited runners. And they were, tonight with Jake, it was costly. Last night with Max, it was almost costly. You mentioned that after Ottavino gave up the home run, the Mets were up only a couple runs. They were only up 1 run after that home run. That Robbie Grossman home run made it 6-5.
It's 1 a.m. recording, Joe.
No. I'm not saying that for the point of correcting you. I'm saying that for the point of emphasizing just how close the Mets were to getting swept in a 4-game set. That's the only reason I'm saying it.
Agreed.
I like Ottavino. I think I like him more than you. I think I like him more than Rec likes him. I think I've been one of Ottavino's biggest defenders and biggest supporters all year.
I love Adam this year.
But at the end of the day, man, I'd rather have Max Scherzer on a so-so night than Ottavino any night, because Ottavino, we've seen it. And, luckily it really hasn't cost the Mets too often, but we've seen Ottavino's prone to that occasional long ball. And in a situation like last night, it didn't cost the Mets, but it was damn close. Too close for comfort. And yeah, I would have rather have Max out there to finish the inning. And I know Ottavino could have just as easily gotten a double play. Grossman never even comes up that inning, and it's 6-1 if that double play is rolled, because a run score there, 3 more with the homer. So I get that, but it's frustrating to watch. And then Lugo did it tonight, and there were a lot of other things that went on in that play. Lugo gave up a weak ground ball up the middle at the end of the day. It was, the defensive positioning and Nimmo throwing to the cutoff guy and, not having the strong arm and just gunning it home. Who was it? Was it,
it was
what's his face again? The kid again. Yeah. Scoring from first on that little grounder. I mean, so we've seen it a couple nights in a row where guys who are supposed to be our best bullpen arms outside of Edwin come in, and then Max and Jake ultimately get charged when it's like, I'd rather have Max and Jake stay out there and get out of it themselves, because I trust them more than I trust Ottavino or Lugo.
And that's completely fair. I think I'm just trying to give some benefit of the doubt to Buck here, because I understood it. It's a high risk type situation, high reward, and unfortunately, it just did not go the Mets' way in these back-to-back games, even though that they did win Game 3. But before we get into Game 4, and we're going to deep dive him more further, I did want to talk about the positives from Game 3, and that was the Mets' offense breaking out. They faced a Jake Odorizzi, who they tacked on 2 runs on that they saw in the first time they faced him in the doubleheader a week ago. And Starling Marte, guns a-blazing, dead center bomb right away in this game. Francisco Lindor, how you doing? A back-to-back, no problem. The Mets are up 2-0 early, but as we advance the second inning, there's a man on base. It was Mark Hanna. I could be wrong because, again, I'm wrong all the time. Mark Hanna had 2 doubles in this game, right? But with that double, you saw Brett Baty make his MLB debut. All the hype. Over 20 of his family, friends, former coaches in attendance. And he rips a curveball that's more down and away in the zone for a 2-run bomb in his first plate appearance as a New York Met. Talk about poetic. Talk about the best moment you could possibly have as a young kid, 22 years of age. He was in high A year ago. Talk about making an impact in such a short period of time. Brett Baty, who's been hitting almost 400 his past 25 games in the minors in AA and AAA, entering his debut yesterday, and he gets all that bad boy. What a moment for him and his family. So what was your initial reaction to see Baty again? He's supposed to be the heir apparent to David Wright. Again, that's a tall task. We're not saying he's ever going to be as good as David. If he's even somewhat good as David in his prime, then by God, do the Mets have something amazing here. But what was your raw reaction? My voice cracked. I was losing my mind. I jumped off my couch. I for a guy that's my same age, I felt like a little kid watching a star in the making.
I mean, I needed to change my pants. It was, you talked about him being in high A year ago. Tyler, he was in AA a month ago. Like,
exactly.
It's ridiculous, right? And for him to just have that storybook start to his career, you know what it reminded me of? It gave me goosebumps. It reminded me of when David Wright in 2015 came off the IL, might have been the DL back then, and hit that homer, his first at-bat at Citizens Bank Park in Philly. That's what it reminded me of. And I know totally different stories. Wright was at that point of his career battling injuries and dealing with spinal stenosis, and it was his return. He had been with the team 10, 11 years already. For Baty, first at-bat, different, but just knowing that it's the franchise third baseman. That's what made it feel like that moment for Wright coming back. Wright, obviously beloved by, I can't even say many, by all, really, right? Like no one didn't love David Wright. He was our captain. He was the cornerstone of this franchise through the great years, 06 to, 07 and 08 didn't end well, but obviously for most of the season, for 159 games, they were great years. Wright was at the heart of that. He stuck with us through the bad years, 09, 10, 11. So when Wright had that moment, it was huge. And now looking at Baty come up and being like, hey, this could be the guy. We're a veteran team, right? Aren't we the oldest team in baseball?
That is correct.
And to see Baty come up there and do this his first at-bat, it's like, hey, we might have him and Alonso on the corners for over a decade to come. That gave me goosebumps. That thought of the two of those guys manning the corners of the infield. It was wild to see. I mean, I love this kid. It's like I'm already ready for this kid to be, a part of this franchise for over a decade.
It's funny that you bring up the David Wright moment because that's exactly what Howie Rose said when you saw that moment for Baty. He said the exact same thing on his call.
Really?
He said the last time, I had goosebumps and had a feeling like never before when Wright had that home run in 2015. I felt the exact same way when Baty hit that home run. So to hear that from Howie and then to hear Keith raving. I mean, talk about trying to keep it in your pants. That was Keith, especially in game one. He was going.
Keith's always trying.
Exactly.
Keith struggles keeping it in his pants.
I know. But seriously, Keith was absolutely floored in a positive way about Baty. Obsessed with his swing, especially because Baty had a line out and that got Canna out in that game 3. But it was a line out lefty and lefty on Matzik, and he had 113 exit velo. That's the 40th hardest hit ball in all of baseball this year. Not that hard hit rate means much, but for us Mets fans, we're going to biasly say that meant something right there, right then. And even today, again in game 4, he said that he loves Baty's swing already more than Yelich in his prime. Like, to hear this from Keith, this is a big deal. And again, we're going to get more into Baty. I think we need to give a little bit of a secluded segment on him in the pod after we round up this Braves series. So I'd say hold your thoughts on anything more you got to say for that, Joe. I really want to go a little bit more on Baty and just how exciting he is of a young prospect at the hot corner. But before we wrap up this Braves series, let's talk about what made it so upsetting. Why we are talking right now, maybe with not as much excitement as you'd probably want. If you're watching YouTube, we probably have lower viewership. If you're listening to your audio, you're probably not listening as much because, again, when you lose a series, Joe, this is only the second time in 15 episodes we've discussed a series loss. Keep that in mind. The last time was against the Houston Astros, one of the 2 times the Mets matched up against them. Hopefully Houston beats up on the Braves the way that they beat up on the Mets, because that's their next matchup. But Game 4, we've already broken it down a little bit. Mets lose a nail-biter, a really frustrating 3-2 game. And Darren Ruff, as you mentioned earlier, was so close to a home run. They had to review it, and unfortunately went foul. He would not get anything that inning. However, Jacob deGrom, looking like Pat Penny to GOAT, the best pitcher in baseball, strikes out 2, a 1-2-3 inning in the second. But as we get to the third, the Mets, this was their opportunity. And again, talk about wasted opportunities. Braves took advantage of the series. The Mets did not nearly as much. You had Mark Canha, who already had now 4 extra base hits as he got his double there in the third. Brett Baty with a single right down the pipe. I love the crack off his bat. Again, we'll get into him more. I'm raving about the kid already.
Whoa, easy. Yeah.
I know. The Mets got
love
runners.
Brett's Wood.
Exactly. The Mets got runners on the corners. No outs. They do not send Canha home. Joey Cora was being a little conservative for a change. Again, I understood that because the ball didn't go too deep. However, the Mets were not able to execute there. What did the Braves do that following half inning? They execute on Jacob deGrom not having a slider for the first time this year in the third, was really laboring, was trying to get it down away. It was going down below the zone. And then he threw a couple of hangers, and that led to a Dansby Swanson RBI double. That also led to an RBI single by Austin Riley. So guys that took advantage against Jake, tip of the cap. They saw hangers, they pulled it, and they got themselves a couple runs on the Mets here. And it felt like doom and gloom for a Mets team early on, because again, when Jake pitches, we're lucky if we get a couple runs for the guy. They won their last start in a 1-0 pitcher's duel against Nola, but tonight that wasn't going to happen. But thankfully, the man that was so underrated in this series, as I mentioned, Mark Canha, 4 extra base hits, pulls a 2-run piss missile that we would see there in the 5th inning to tie the ball game. It's a clean slate. It's a new ball game. It's back to 0-0 essentially, right? So Jacob deGrom goes on to then carve and shut down 12 straight batters until the final batter that he saw there in the 7th. Trying to go 7 innings through 95 pitches, 6.2 innings pitched, as a matter of fact. Only had a couple earned runs. They bring in Seth Lugo. Jake is on 95 pitches. I understood Buck here, but at the same time, if we're viewing it from a standpoint of who do you trust more, I'm taking Jake, even with on a pitch count. It's not even close. When you have the best pitcher in baseball, who do I want to get out of a jam? When you need one measly out, I want Jacob deGrom. Seth Lugo comes in. He gives up a soft single. I think it was Austin Riley. I could be wrong. It was their center right.
Harris, right? Harris,
maybe. Yes, it was Harris. You're correct. The young kids, Harris and Grissom, definitely had an impact this series. Again, tip of the cap. They're really looking good so far in their young careers with the Braves. But you see the Mets, based on the shift, they could not get any infielders to drop down. Nimmo playing a little bit back on the ball, has to get in front of it. Gives a little bit of a toss there that we see to the cutoff man. Can't get a home in time. Grissom gets to home because this time not a conservative third base coach for the first time in forever in Joey Cora. And the third, we see an aggressive third base coach and the legend that is Ron Washington at third, rounding him to go home. And that would be the executing run that would make this game possible for the Braves for them to end up winning. So as frustrating as it was to see Lugo give up that hit, I almost don't blame Lugo as much as I do the defensive alignment. And unfortunately, Brandon Nimmo, I'm not trying to nitpick the guy too much. I love Brandon Nimmo. Who doesn't? Brandon Nimmo has not been playing good baseball the past month. He's not seen the ball well. He struck out 3 times in this game. And Brandon, if you're not going to hit well, and maybe you're going to have one defensive issue, again, Brandon's arm's been good. He hasn't been tested much at all this year. With the glove, he's fantastic. Gold glove kid. But the arm has not been tested. It was tonight. Couldn't get the job done. And at minimum, if you can't give us defense, Brandon, if you can't give us that great plate discipline, right, where you're at least making contact, at minimum, grind out at bats and give us a walk or two. That is your job as a leadoff hitter. Nimmo was not able to do it in tonight's game, and he hasn't been consistently in over a month span. This is actually some of the worst baseball he's played while healthy, because in years past, he's dealt with some shoulder injuries, some neck issues, so that was more justified. And again, not to nitpick the guy too much. We love Brandon Nimmo, but he was a factor in the Mets game 4 loss here because of the lack of consistent offense for this Mets team. Because as you advance forward, his third strikeout came after James McCann finally hit a baseball this series. He hit it for an opposite field double. Nimmo in that spot trying to drive in the run, less than 2 outs, strikes out, and then Marte with a broken bat, ground out, ends the inning. We get to the 9th, an even more frustrating, annoying play that really just tells you what this series was all about. Francisco Lindor gets his first base knock in his career against Kenley Jansen. First time the two matched up. Lindor running, looking like he has a stolen bag with ease for whatever reason, Pete Alonso, who again had a big hit in game 3, didn't do anything besides that. First pitch swinging, opposite field, the ball drops, and Lindor's stuck, and he's out to force out. Then you have the slower guy, Alonso, at first. They would have Marrero pinch run. Marrero would actually steal a bag, but the Mets would not be able to bring him in, and that ends the ball game. So, Joe, what is your final takeaway here from game 4 in this overall series of defeat? Because this just feels like a series where the Mets simply didn't have it. They did not have the consistent offense. They did not have the bullpen. And these are two things that need to change and change fast, as the Mets have a out of nowhere pivotal, really, really important matchup against a Phillies team, while the Mets don't have all their normal starters in there for that 4-game set.
Yeah, look, it's just, this was one of those games where the Mets were set up for success. You had Fried making his first start in a while because he was out with a concussion. Jake was rolling, looking great. Made a couple, and not many, just a couple bad pitches in the third. It's like one of those games where you just say, like, the ball's not bouncing their way, right? That was just what happened, Jake had Swanson, 2 strikes, 2 outs in the third, and left a hanging slider out there. Something he rarely ever does, was trying to go away. Thing bled out inside corner. Swanson's a professional hitter. Turned back to McCann, said, I'll take care of this one. Austin Riley, same thing. It wasn't as bad of a slider as the one he threw Swanson, but it was still one that got way more plate than it was intended to. And Riley's a great hitter. The Braves have a lineup, top to bottom, that I think is superior to the Mets. You can argue I think it's the best lineup in baseball, right?
And they got Ozzie Albies coming back before you know it.
Yeah, right? Although, I mean, the way Grisham's playing since he got called up, I don't even know if Albies would be an upgrade over this kid. But, I think the Mets' advantage is obviously pitching, and that's why I was really hoping to salvage games 3 and 4 with Max and Jake. But the Braves, top to bottom, I mean, their lineup, I think it's better than the Mets, Astros, Yankees, you name it, Dodgers, Padres. The Braves lineup is ridiculous. And you make a mistake, Swanson, Riley, the rest of them, Robbie freaking Grossman, they're going to make you pay. And that's what they did. Jake made 2 mistakes. It's very rare he makes 1 mistake, let alone 2 in a game. But he came back. And, you mentioned 12 guys in a row. And, then he gives up the hit to Grisham, gets pulled. It's like, I don't disagree with Buck as much about pulling him there, 95 pitches, 4th start back, as I do with, Scherzer last night. But, what can you do? Things just weren't going their way. Lugo didn't give up a hard hit ball. He didn't pull an Ottavino, give up a bomb, gives up a little grounder up the middle. And, Nimmo fudges it up. And look, I love Nimmo. We all love Nimmo. I mean, in the same way I just mentioned, every Mets fan loves David Wright. I don't know too many Mets fans don't love Brandon Nimmo. But you got to call it how it is, especially, when we're doing a show like this, right? You can't just be, part of these guys' fan club every episode. And Brandon Nimmo just hasn't been doing the job. You mentioned his glove. This is the best glove I've ever seen out of Brandon Nimmo.
100%.
Covering more range than ever. His center field play, the way he reads balls, gets jumps, it's superb. It's phenomenal. But his arm is trash. And hitting the cutoff guy there, I don't know if he took it for granted that, it's a little grounder up the middle. Grisham's not going to go first to home on this, right? It was like a sloppy play. It was a play that should have never happened. That little grounder up the middle should have never resulted in the game-winning run. And so that really pisses me off. What was the old Family Guy line? That grinds my gears. Is that what Peter
that really
would say?
grinds my gears? Yeah.
That really grinds. Yeah, letting a guy score from first on a little grounder up the middle. That really grinds my gears. But it was just a series where, health-wise, play-wise, the ball just wasn't bouncing the Mets' way. I hope that they can let it go quickly, because this Phillies series is really important. It's really important. Our lead on Atlanta is down to 4 games. We got to go out. We got to go to Philly now, a ballpark that, as a visiting team in recent years, we've had pretty good success in. And we've got to hit the freaking crap out of the ball. The bats have to wake up, because this series just, we had 1 offensive outburst and 3 games of absolutely nothing. Bats got to wake up. It's August in Citizens Bank Park. The ball flies. We got to hit the crap out of it.
Yes, we do. And before we pivot into Brett Baty and the Phillies, 2 more things I just want to mention quick. That Grissom play that we saw from first to home wasn't even the first time it happened this series, if you remember. In game 1, Mark Hanna lost the ball in the lights, the clouds, whatever was happening before the rain delay. And Michael Harris, again, the guy that drove in Grissom in game 4, was the man who did the exact same thing. Rounded all the way from first to home with ease, head down, bolting. Great speed from both these respective young studs. And the big thing, though, I will say, there's one positive from this bullpen for the most part in this series. It's the guy who was Jekyll and Hyde, got absolutely beat up in game one, but he made up for it sneakily here in game four. And that was Michael Givens striking out the side in the eighth. He struck out Acuna. He struck out Swanson. He struck out Riley. So I know that this guy, again, has been anything but dependent for the Mets right now and needing this guy down the stretch and in close games. But you'd have to imagine that this is great for his confidence and a nice positive boost for him personally and for the Mets. Maybe you don't think it's as much, but I think it's impressive considering of how subpar the Mets bullpen was this entire series. That's a positive in my mind. And hopefully we can see more of that from Givens in this 4-game matchup against the Phillies.
Really quick, what can you do when you come in and a team is up 3-2? I know it was a close game, but we were losing when he did that.
Yeah.
Givens, I don't trust him with a lead. I
don't trust him with a lead either, but I'm saying this was definitely a point in the right direction is what I'm trying to make.
I hope. I just right now, I don't even know if he's worthy of making a postseason roster. He gives me agita. I don't know. I mean, you're Italian. You know what agita means.
Of course.
Michael Givens gives me agita on the mound. So I don't know. I mean, maybe it was a step in the right direction, and I like the way that you're looking at things optimistically. That's usually my shtick. But him, Trevor May last night, and May is a guy who I usually try to stick in his corner. I like Trevor May. When he's on, he's great, but he's got to be on more often. I mean, this bullpen it's scaring the shit out of me right now, to be completely frank.
And, that's the thing because it's not like the Mets are going to be tested endlessly down the stretch with this pen. Yes, you got this big matchup against the Phillies 4 games, and they're going to really have to use a lot of these pitchers again. Then you got the Subway Series, but you got Max and Jake. So hopefully they both go, let's say, assumably 7 innings. That would be the most ideal from both of them. And then you got the Dodgers at the end of the month. But after that, you have the easiest schedule you've had all year in September up until you have that Braves matchup, your final series, the second to last series of the year. So we may see a lot of these guys really find their game against lesser opponents, but how are they going to look then when they match up against the Braves before the season ends and then ultimately playoffs? Is this something where they're going to build confidence against lesser opponents, hopefully, and can ride that and do that effectively against better teams come playoff time? Or are we going to kind of be tricked as Mets fans and see guys produce really well against, again, below 500 clubs, and then they come back to reality? So we're really not going to know for certain until we get down the stretch and come playoff time what exactly the Mets have here. And it's going to be crucial to see what Drew Smith does, Tyler McGill. But that's it for the Braves series. Let's talk about a quick highlight again as we raved about him. Brett Baty. I mean, to say my reaction was ridiculous is an understatement to see him hit that bomb. But to see his quality at bats, Brett Baty has looked locked in every single at bat he's had. I think he struck out once this entire series in the first 2 games. He put the ball in play basically every single time. Hard contact. It doesn't matter if you're a lefty and lefty or a righty, he's going to hit you. And this was a Baty that entering this series to be called up by the Mets, 800 OPS against Southpaws this year in the minor leagues, a roughly 1,000 OPS against right-handers. So he's raked from both sides. It doesn't matter who's throwing, he's still going to barrel that bad boy. So, Joe, I kind of want to know in further length, what excitement level do you have for a Brett Baty right now that, let's be honest, it's his job to lose? Eduardo Escobar is on the IL. He's fully aware that he's been platooning for a bit because of how well Luis Guillorme was pitching, not playing rather. And I understand Guillorme is someone that has an elite glove. When he's healthy, closer to playoff time, if not playoff time, he's going to be crucial to having this Mets team. Maybe they're going to have some days where they have maybe Guillorme at second and they throw Jeff to left just because they want their deepest team possible, both offensively and defensively. But for Brett Baty right here, right now, there's a fair argument to be had that unless he completely falls off a cliff, he very well could be with this Mets team for the remainder of the season, make an impact, especially in September, and have an impact come playoff time. So what's your takeaway on all that?
I'll tell you what, I wish Guillorme was in there late in the game when DeGrom gave up that infield hit to Grisham.
I agree. He would have had it. I agree.
I'm not trying to rag on the kid. I do think really quickly that should have been an unearned run. I know that he had to show some range and go to his left on that, but I thought it was not really a hard hit ball. I thought it was hit softly enough that the play should have been made. I thought that was an error, not an infield hit. Is what it is. Hometown scoring. They want to inflate DeGrom's ERA, whatever. But overall, when it comes to Baty, like I said before, man, the thought of him and Alonso manning the corners of the infield for the next decade plus, how can you not get excited thinking about that? I mean, these are two guys that, defensively, they may not offer a whole lot, but these are two guys that have great bats, that they're young, especially in Baty's case, he's super young, but I Bleav that they've both shown potential to be great leaders. Pete already has. I'm ready for Pete to have that C on his chest. To me, Alonso is worthy of being a captain. Baty, from what I've seen and heard in the minors, he's got a great head on his shoulders. He's a leader as well. Seems really mature for his age. I mean, what is he? Is he 22 years old?
He's 22. I'm literally 22
22.
in 10 days. So we're like the same.
Yeah, I mean, ridiculous that I'm 2 years older than this kid. And he already kind of gives that pro vibe to him. I mentioned him and Pete for the next decade plus. Lindor is on a 10-year contract. And, McNeil is, I hope he's a career Met. It's like he's the guy he's the missing puzzle piece. We know Lindor is going to be here. I hope we know Pete's going to be here. I can't imagine the Mets not locking Pete up. If we retain Jeff, Baty's the guy. Escobar was always going to be a short-term, he was a layover. And he hasn't performed at all this year, had that little hot streak in July, but really has not performed consistently at all. And now that he's on the shelf, it's like we're getting Baty sooner than expected, and he might never leave. And that is really, really freaking exciting.
Baty is the beginning of the new Mets, right? We have Francisco Alvarez. He's the guy that everyone's talked about since day one this year. When's he getting called up? Well, as much as we love Alvarez, he's still heading below the Mendoza line in AAA. So it's still an adjustment for him, not just offensively being consistent, being not as much swing and miss, even though that's his game, because when he barrels the bad boy, it's going 500 feet. That's why he's a top prospect of baseball still right now. Mark Vientos has done anything and everything to be called up, but he just doesn't have defense. So that's what made Brett Baty so enticing to be this call up among himself and Vientos in particular. But while Baty still needs adjustments at the defensive hot corner, there's no denying that, it really feels like his bat is going to make up for it in the end. He just looks calm, cool, and collected. Has that Yelich-esque swing, as I mentioned, that Keith compared, but he just has so much power. And this is a power that he's built in a fairly short period of time. 19 bombs in AAA this year, 75 runs scored, 60 RBIs, way over 900 OPS. This kid has done everything in such a short period of time here. And now that he's with the Mets, I mean, how can you not rave about him? To say the excitement level, if the Mets need a spark, if they need a guy that can give them more consistent offensive production, look no further than Brett Baty to help this Mets team right here, right now, especially as they enter a batter's box in Philly. And let's segue into this Phillies matchup now, shall we? Because the Mets got a 4-game set going on right now. And I did not think that this 4-game set would be as important as it is right now, but it is. Even with the Phillies being up and down as of late since they played the Mets, you look at this Mets team, Joe, and one thing that I have been honestly concerned with this offense is how it's constructed. No, they're not big hit or miss, but when the Mets do lose their eye a little bit at that strike zone, they're not able to grind out those at-bats. So you don't have that consistent home run ball for the most part that you get with the Braves. As crazy as swing as miss as they are, and as much as I love the Braves offense, they are a team that is susceptible to really striking out a lot. And that's why I love the Mets. But when you see the Mets get carved up by Ranger Suarez, when you see the Mets get carved up by Aaron Nola, not Zach Wheeler, but again, Aaron Nola. You look at the same thing with Spencer Strider to a lesser extent. Charlie Morton, a guy that had basically like his best start so far this year for the Braves when he's like, 37, 38 now. I'm not going to slide him because we got Jake, we got Max. These are older pitchers, but he isn't to those degrees, obviously. Point being is that the Mets have proven to me many times this year, while they can hit competent pitching, they don't do it consistently. And reminds me a bit, especially in that stretch in June, when they faced the Dodgers. They could do nothing against Tyler Anderson. They didn't do well against Urias. They can't hit you, Darvish, both in San Diego and at home. And these are guys that, again, aren't the best pitchers in the world, but are among the better ones in baseball right now. So you look at the laundry list of starters that the Mets have faced this year. You look at how they faced against the Astros. Even without McNeil in the lineup, they could not hit shit. Let's call it out, plain and simple. That is a concern for me as a Mets fan that knows that they're destined to ball out. Maybe they won this Phillies series, even against Nola and others, maybe even Wheeler too. And maybe they're going to do the exact same thing down the stretch in September against lesser opponents. But I personally am going to be very interested to see how they go down the stretch. And I'm just filled with question marks, Joe. I really am. I don't know exactly how this offense is going to look when it matters most. The same exact thing that can be said with this bullpen. But if there's any time for the Mets to jump and get offense going, it's in Philly, and it starts with Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso, he is the David Wright 2.0 in Citizens Bank. He absolutely rakes in that place. Look at the numbers. They will tell you exactly that. And the Mets, the matchups, they're fun. I'm going to be in game 1 for this game. I'll be in like 400 something, taking my buddy. It's his birthday today at the time of you guys watching and listening to this, or recording, actually. He's a Phillies fan, though. He's a schmuck, but I'm like, you know what? I'll take you. I reside in PA, so I have to deal with this. But
Major schmuck.
I'm major schmuck, I know. But I'm taking him the game. I'm like, you know, you got to watch your Phillies. I got to watch my Mets. Maybe I'll stream after while you're driving. Hopefully the Mets win and you hear me rant for an hour on my phone. It'll be fun, hopefully, right? But we get Seabass, who's done so well against the Phillies. We see here 5 innings, 0 earned runs the last time he matched up against them in their last series. 10-7 with a 3.27 ERA. Was an absolute bulldog to get out of that jam in that 5th inning, his final start especially. Facing off against, yes, Aaron Nola, the man who went 8 innings, 1 earned run, 8 strikeouts against the Mets. Mets still somehow won because they had the better pitcher in Jacob deGrom. 8-9 on the year with a 3.07 ERA. Joe, what's your initial raw reaction to this game 1 matchup? How are you feeling about it?
Bassett's been great lately, but I mean, you know, Nola threw a complete game against us, allowed 1 run. Like, that's nothing to scoff at. I don't care at the end of the day, win, loss, whatever. I care about the team win. I don't care about how it impacted his record. Guy has gotten he's gotten a lot of rough breaks this year. You know, you mentioned his ERA is almost sub 3. What is it, 3.07? And he's 8-9. You know, that should never happen, obviously. I mean, we've seen worse. We've seen Jacob
deGrom is looking somewhere with like a smirk on his face.
Yeah, like we've seen him go, 10-9 with a sub 2. But yeah, Nola's a dog. But lately Bassett hasn't just been a dog, been a freaking pit bull. And I think you and Rec mentioned me actually last episode when I missed it. I think you guys referenced me when you were talking about Bassett. And just mentally, you know, the guy was 7-7 at one point with like a 3.7 ERA.
Yeah.
So now 3 straight wins. The ERA is already, you know, under 3.3, 3.27. You know, you're looking at a couple more good starts. The guy's going to have a sub 3. It's like not too long ago, we were a long way away from that. He's been incredible. Chris Bassett's been incredible. Now, this is not a pitcher's park, Citizens Bank. And Bassett's home and road splits are vastly different. He's been a lot better at Citi Field this year than he's been elsewhere. So, you know, you don't have a lot of wiggle room. And that's why this game makes me nervous. Citizens Bank Park, you don't have a lot of wiggle room. Nola's a really good pitcher. It could be first guy to make a mistake, you know, that guy's ship gets sunk. We'll see. But this is an important game, you know, 4-game set. You know, Wheeler's going one of the 2 games. Is it Saturday? They got the doubleheader, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you know, Wheeler's going one of those 2. This is a really important tone setter. You know, you really want to go up 1-0 here, you know, expecting hopefully a split Saturday. And then who knows what happens Sunday, because that's so up in the air with Ty's health and his availability.
I will go as far as to say is that this game 1 is the most important game by far of the series, because Bassett on paper, he's the Mets' best pitching option this series. Let's face it. You know, there's no denying that Bassett is the best guy that the Mets will have available. And it's going to be huge to see how deep he can go in this game, because Nola has proven he can go 6, 7, even 8 if he's really carving up guys with ease. Bassett is not a guy that's been notorious for going deep in games. You know, he might give you a strong 6, but he does work that pitch count up a little bit if he, again, is getting some soft contact, whatever it may be. Because, again, when you have an arsenal like Bassett as well, he's just throwing anything and everything at you. And when he doesn't have his best stuff, that is especially where he's just going to grind you out and make sure they can do the best he can. He's a guy that wants to eat innings, but he consistently is not a guy that's going 7 every 4th, 5th day. So I think it's really going to come down to not just these matchups, but who potentially even goes deeper because of the lack of trust that I have this Mets bullpen right now. They need to prove to me their worth because they haven't as of late. It's as simple as that, man. But we got the doubleheader. That's a big one for the Mets. And we got 2 guys that just a couple days ago were not even in the Mets rotation. Here they are pitching in games 2 and 3 of the doubleheader. David Pearson, who I am excited to see, I'm not going to lie. David is still on his normal rest to be a starter. And now he's sliding in for Cookie Carrasco in this rotation for the next month. And thank goodness for David Pearson, what he has done to this point this season, right? He's been really, really strong. That slider down and in, that slider down and away. He's looked nasty. He's been, to a lesser extent, doing his best Scherzer DeGrom Diaz impression. When that thing is going, he's getting a lot of swing and miss. And Pearson on there, he's 6-2 with a 3.3 ERA. Last time he faced the Phillies was only once this year, April 11th, like their first matchup this year. He went 4 scoreless. I'm pretty sure that was actually the game Taijuan Walker got hurt early in the season, and then Pearson came in to pitch for him in lawn relief. So Pearson did good then. That was a very different Phillies team than it is now. He's matching up against Zach Wheeler. Wheeler, of course, we know the story with him, 11-6, 2.92 ERA. The Mets got the better number of Wheeler, 6 innings, 6 earned runs. I need to see the Mets do more of that because this is a series. I don't expect Pearson to go deep. I don't expect Williams to go deep. How's that bullpen going to look? Who's going to be available? The offense needs to prevail here. And in game 3, Trevor Williams, who, while he's been phenomenal for the Mets, he has been a far superior reliever than he has been a starter thus far in the season. 2-5 with a 3.02 ERA. Pitched 2 scoreless innings in relief against the Phillies last time they matched up, facing Falter, who is a young pitcher for the Phillies, who's 0-3 on the year with a 4.85 ERA, surrendered 2 earned runs in 3 innings against the Mets back in late May. So what's your take on that doubleheader? Because for me, I just feel like we could see a hell of a lot of offense, if I'm being quite frank.
Yeah, man. I mean, look, I love Peterson and I love Trevor Williams, and they've both played huge monumental parts in the Mets' success this year when Scherzer's gone down while Jake was out. But you hit the nail on the head. You mentioned that they don't go deep into games, and that scares me. And especially, I need Bassett to go deep Friday night. I need like 7 strong out of Seabass, because as tough as he pitched, as well as he pitched his last start, he went 5. We cannot afford the Mets right now with all these games in so few days, and 5 game sets with the Braves and 4 with the Phils, and the Mets can't afford Bassett to go 5 in game 1, because Peterson on his best day is probably going to give you 6 on his best day, may give you 5, and Williams on his best day is going to give you 5. I mean, what are we looking at here? Like 8 innings of relief in the doubleheader on Saturday. And then Sunday, who the hell knows, with Ty, how long he can go, if he's even pitching. If there's a spot starter, then the guy's not going to go more than like 5. The bullpen right now is scaring me. Overworking them this series is scaring me. Inconsistencies are scaring me. I'm not one to sound the alarms, but right now, that's my biggest takeaway at this doubleheader is, man, how are we going to navigate this bullpen? And hopefully Bassett can save them on Friday night.
100%. And looking at game 4, this is a wild card right now. At the time recording this, we don't know. Taijuan Walker, as we mentioned earlier, said it was the worst pain he's ever felt from those back spasms. So even though it looked like it was a simple play going to first, he really cramped up bad to the point where he hasn't experienced this pain ever in his career. He, however, again, earlier today at the time recording this, said he's good to go, feeling a lot better, but that is still undecided. And coincidentally, the Mets, who have Jose Buto, who's a young right-hand pitching prospect for them in the Myers right now, only pitched 1 inning today, and he is the most ready and available pitcher for the Mets to call up. So he's lined up to pitch Sunday, should Taijuan Walker not. But let's break them both down real quick. Ty on the year, should he come back? It's going to be interesting to see, 1, how he's feeling, and 2, how deep can Ty go himself? Again, he's a guy that at times can surely go deep when he has his stuff right, but also at the same time, if he's not feeling great, if his pitches are a little flat, we could have ourselves with needing a lot of bullpen help. Walker, 10-3 on the year, 3.36 ERA for the most part, has been rock solid, other than that Braves outing where he gave up 8 earned and only 1 innings. And the last time he faced the Phillies this year in late May, 5 innings, only 2 earned runs, and he's facing against Kyle Gibson, the veteran right-hander for the Phillies, his second year with the Phillies after being traded to Texas Rangers from there last year. 8-5 with a 4.3 ERA. Last time he faced the Mets, had a solid outing back in May. The Mets, of course, won that series. The Mets have not lost a series to the Phillies all year long. He went 6 innings, only surrendered 2 earned runs in that matchup. But we have Ty as an option. But if Ty does not pitch, we have Jose Buto, who has right around a 4 ERA this year for the young kid. He was called up to AAA, has been pitching in both double and triple. Hasn't done as well in AAA as he did in double, to nothing drastic, between a 4.5 ERA. Buto, I have no clue what to expect from him. Regardless on his arsenal, I feel like we don't need to break it down, because if he's rushed up and caught up, this can either go great for the Mets. Maybe they're going to get a guy that they can utilize and value down the stretch, maybe as a long reliever, or this is a guy that's going to get work quickly and is out within a couple innings. Then the Mets have themselves another bullpen game. And this is, again, let's not forget, a Mets team that just got off of a 4-game series in Atlanta with no days of rest. So that just makes it that much more pivotal for these pitchers to stretch out and go as deep as they possibly can. So, Joe, What's your take on Taijuan Walker if he potentially pitches against Kyle Gibson and potentially Jose Butto?
My take is, are we off Monday? Do we have an off day Monday?
We do not have an off day Monday. I'm in attendance. That's Subway Series, baby. It's continuing to roll. They do have an off day after the Subway Series, though, because then they have a 4-game matchup against the Rockies, which will go to the Old Timers Day game on the 27th.
This is ridiculous. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sitting here and I haven't been this nervous about anything for the Mets all year. It's like, it's tough. When you look at Ty versus Butto, it's like I don't look at anyone giving us more than 6. I'm just thinking about this bullpen right now, and I'm like, man, is Drew Smith back? Is McGill back? Can these guys who we currently have stay healthy? This is a scary series from a bullpen perspective, man. With Ty, I almost feel like he shouldn't make the start. I almost feel like it's rushing him back. If he experienced that kind of severe pain, I just, he had his worst start of the year. Although, no, the Atlanta start was his worst. But prior to that, his worst start of the year was at Citizens Bank Park earlier this season, his first start back from the IL. And the Mets bailed him out. It's the best comeback win of the year for the Mets.
Absolutely.
But Ty, it was the second worst start of his season, one of only really 2 bad starts he's had. And then you get Butto, and, for all the great prospects we have currently offensively, our pitching prospects are slim. He doesn't impress me all that much. Maybe he'll come up and, be an unknown who shocks me. We've seen that before. DeGrom, perfect example.
McGill.
Yeah, exactly, man. So maybe, but it's like, if we're down 1-2 in the series, he's not the guy I'm looking towards to salvage things and save our ass and walk away with a split. It's tough. It's tough. I mean, I don't know enough about Ty's status right now, how he's feeling right now, because it's so, you have to look at it as a day-to-day case. And I just don't know how Ty is feeling on a day-to-day level right now enough to be like, he's good to go. We can be confident in running him out there, or it's not worth it. But the one thing I do know is just it all circles back to the bullpen for me. We just have to hit, because I feel like there's going to be some slugfests in Philly. I already mentioned, this time of year, it's hot, it's humid, the ball flies. But then you look at the pitching matchups and, the 2 games that Nola and Wheeler aren't going, Gibson, I know he pitched well against us his last time out. He's nothing special. You got to slug.
We got to make sure he doesn't look like anything special is the point.
Yeah, he's got an ERA of 4+. He's nothing special. If you have an ERA of 4+, you're not. And the Mets have to really take advantage of it. And Gibson's prone to the long ball, and the Mets have to take advantage of that. And then who are Philly running out there for the other game of the doubleheader? Is that even known? Or
Falter.
Yeah, I mean, you got to capitalize. The Mets have to capitalize, and in an ideal, perfect world, take one of the Nola Wheeler games.
Yeah, I think as crazy as this is to say, I think a split of this series, granted, I understand the pitching matchups and I understand it'll be easier said than done, but even a split doesn't feel satisfying enough after dropping 3 of 4 to the Braves. All things considered, all injuries considered, because at the end of the day, if the Mets just had a competent offense in at least game 2 of that Braves matchup, they split. If not game 4, they split or win 3 of 4. That was a series that the Mets surely could have had in their grasp, and they did not do it. They did not step up to the plate, and they let it walk away, losing 3 out of those 4 against these Phillies. Again, Phillies haven't been doing anything. They have not been red hot since facing the Mets. They've been up and down. Now is the time to take advantage, because it doesn't get much easier. Yes, the Yankees have been free falling, but we know the seriousness. We know the vibe of Subway Series. Everything changes. Yes, you got Max and Jake, but the offense still needs to show up. I don't give a rat's ass who's pitching. If you do not show up offensively, it's not going to matter. And we know this story far too well as Mets fans. We've seen it for years with Jake. We've seen it for years with other guys as well. The offense needs to step up. Pete Alonso, Francisco Lindor. Lindor's been good. Alonso has been in a little bit of a rut lately. I need Pete to break out this series. I really do.
This is the ballpark to do it. Lindor has been amazing, by the way. Frankie Lindor has been our best hitter. Marte had that great game, 2 homers, game 3 when Scherzer pitched. But yeah, Pete's in a rut. And, he's still getting base knocks here and there, and he's keeping that average right around that 280 mark, and I respect that. But he's definitely, he's definitely slumping. I mean, he hasn't hit a home run in, it feels like 2 weeks, right? He's been stuck at 29. I see, Goldschmidt tied him. I see guys passing him. Pete's, something, his timing, just watching him against Charlie Morton I thought Martin threw some curveballs that Pete could have done some damage to. And I know Martin was on and he made everyone look silly, but he threw some curveballs that were low in the strike zone, but they were like knee high. They weren't, they weren't below the strike zone. They were like knee high. And I felt like Pete, if his timing was there, could have driven them. And he was just way out in front of shit. Pete's a little off right now. We need him to wake up this weekend.
Yes, we do. And I expect a good series from McNeil, Canna. I think, again, the platoon guys. Daniel Vogelback's going to get a good amount of playing time. Let's see him get a little hot. That'd be awesome. We love Hoagie Vogie. Darren Ruff facing his former team in the Philadelphia Phillies, a team that brought him into the league. Let's see him maybe hit a bomb, get a gap, or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And Tyler
Falter's a
Naquin.
lefty, right?
Yeah. What's that?
Falter's a lefty, right?
I Bleav so, yes.
Yeah,
so
let's have Ruff take him.
Exactly. And we're also going to hopefully see Tyler Naquin. He's, I'd imagine, start, if not half the games, and surely at least one of the doubleheader games. Naquin has been swinging the bat great in his past couple at bats, but it's very limited for the most part. He has been such a bright spot for this Mets team, other than some lackluster defense at times. Those guys, I'm looking to step up the depth of this lineup, but more than anything, it starts with Alonso and a guy that we talked about earlier, Brandon Nimmo. Nimmo does well against the Phillies. Let's see, Brandon, find your swing, control the strike zone. Yes, Nolan might be carving, and Wheeler has good command, but especially against a Gibson, especially against everyone, I should say, not even just those separate guys. Nimmo's done it against the best of the best. I need to see him locked in so bad, just like Alonso and everyone else. But with that being said, I think we hit the nail on the head. This was over an hour-long episode. You would think that would be shorter, again, for losing 3-4 against the Braves, but we had a lot to talk about, and hopefully the next time we talk, which we'll be recording Sunday night, will be out early Monday for you guys to kick off the Subway Series. We have a series win, or at absolute worst, a series split to discuss. But before we get out of here, Joe, where can everyone find you? And do you have any final closing thoughts? Let me hear it.
Yeah, well, catch me on social, on Instagram at Joe Serralo, on Twitter at the Joe Serralo. And of course, I've got my other show, Serralo Sports Talk. Took a 2-week break because of this vacation I'm on, but I'm back in LA this weekend. I'll be back Saturday. The show will be back next week. And sometime in the next 2 weeks, keep an eye out. I've got a certain starting quarterback from the AFC South going to be joining me on Serralo Sports Talk. So keep an eye out there. Hit me up on the socials. And we're going to have a little flurry of episodes coming up. We're going to have a Subway Series preview, Tyler, right? Monday morning, that'll be dropping. And then quick 2-game set. I'd imagine we're going to have another one recorded Tuesday night, out Wednesday morning.
Absolutely.
So Bleav in Queens going to be busy, and we got some merch. So go rep us. All of our shirts say Bleav in Queens, either on the chest, like the one that says Bleav in Queens, or on the sleeve for the other one. So, rep us, send us pictures, tag us on socials. We'll retweet, repost, reshare everything. And maybe we'll even have to work in some giveaways, Tyler.
I think we're going to have to, exactly that. But that's going to do it for this episode, guys. Make sure to check me out, WardyNYM, on Twitter, and of course on YouTube. If you guys are watching especially, make sure to drop a like, subscription, rate, review, wherever you get your podcast, however you're listening or watching this. This was episode 15 of Bleav in Queens. For Joe Serralo, I'm Tyler Ward, and we will see you guys all after the Phillies series.